Welcome back to Cafecito Chats. So today's topic emerged because I was helping a student. I helped them prepare for the actual job interview. They went through the job interview and then they actually got an offer, which is awesome, fantastic. And then I kind of said, hey, if you want, I can take a look at the offer with you. I can run down some scenarios. And then if depending on what they offer, we could go ahead and negotiate. So they shared the offer with me. I looked at it and I said, you could definitely ask for a little bit more. Negotiating is part of the process, et cetera, et cetera. But it turns out that they said, oh, I'm a little hesitant to do it. This is a first time job that they were getting. So they were a little hesitant to actually go ahead and negotiate. Rightly so. The other thing that they said is, I've been looking for a job for about almost 9 months, 10 months, something along those lines of time period of a gap, right? They were working at another place, not necessarily doing engineering, but it was a different type of job that they were doing. However, they were a little hesitant to even consider negotiation on this job offer because they were scared or fearful that they might have the job offer rescinded, right? And they might say, I already have this one secured. All I have to do is say yes. If I send an email or a negotiation letter, the company might take a second turn and then they say thank you, but no thank you. We have other candidates that will take the amount. So that's where this particular topic came from. You won't lose the offer. Why not negotiate, right? So that's how I started off by telling you a little bit of why the topic came about, and part of it is honestly, if you're afraid, that's fine. It's a respectful situation. Everybody has their own perspective, right? But I believe at a personal level, from what I've seen over the years and my experience here at the industry level, there's a lot of room for negotiation. The first offer is not necessarily the last offer. And I believe that human resources really expects at least 30 or 40% of the candidates that get an offer to go ahead and negotiate. That's what I've heard. That's what I've seen some of the actual recruiters indicate to me. They would, that they would hope that a lot of people would actually negotiate a little more, but a lot of people take the offer and run with it. So that's where we're at. So that being said is you have to understand your value, and then how do you actually approach the conversation of negotiation? So those are the big three topics or subtopics that we're going to be tackling. Why are people fearful and decide not to negotiate? Understanding your value and how to frame it so that you can have a conversation with the human resources or the company that actually extended the offer and make sure that you get the best opportunity extended over to you. So that's what we're going to be starting with. So I'm going to tap into Lourdes Sarmiento. Thank you for joining us. I hope you heard the topic for the day, but I want to ask you, did you or have you a couple scenarios? The first one, when you first actually got your first job, did you negotiate? That's the first question. And then secondly, in retrospect, have you negotiated in any other positions, and what has been the outcome or what has been your experience? Lourdes?
For my first one, I didn't negotiate. I should have, but I didn't. I think I was young and I didn't know anything better. For my second one, I did negotiate moving expenses because it was about 5 hours away from San Diego. So I negotiated. So I got like extra money based on because I have to move and all that stuff. And it wasn't like the job. You know, when they give you the job, it's like relocation. Sometimes it says available, like relocation expenses available. Mine didn't have that, but I still asked about it, and they were like, "Yes, here's the money."
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting insight. I did also help maybe a month or two ago. I helped somebody else, And I went through the negotiation effort, and this particular individual did take my offer on it, and or my my take on it, and I helped craft the letter with the support of the individual, and we did also get relocation stipend. They were not being offered a relocation stipend initially. It was an opportunity that was going to be taking them away from the city that they lived in, and it was more than 50 miles. So anything over 50 miles, consider possible relocation opportunities. Make sure that you ask for a relocation bonus or stipend, however they want to call it, right? Which normally includes, if you're in California, should include transportation fees for a moving truck, or at least consider the fact that you're going to be looking for an apartment or some sort of room for renting, and you need to have that cash to be able to give us a first month, last month, and deposit. So that's a big chunk of why you really need to have some sort of funds to be able to relocate. Obviously, a lot of us tend to here have an emergency fund, which is great. But at the same time, when you're starting your career, it's a little difficult to have that liquidity in cash. So having a bonus or stipend for relocation is essential. Hence, you can ask a lot of the engineering companies. They will gladly help and support as long as you present the case. Lourdes?
Oh, I've actually talked to my friends who are taking new jobs and stuff, and I've always said negotiate this, negotiate that, and they're always like afraid. I think it might be more of a cultural thing because, as Latinos, it's like take what you get as opportunity, like be grateful type of thing mentality versus being like, I'm worth more, like give me more, like asking those questions. And I was even telling her, like, write an email that's respectful, and just ask. The worst they can say is no. And she was like, no, my parents were like, I should just take the opportunity with what they're giving me. So yeah, it's common.
Right. And you're right. That's exactly what this individual told me, where this particular topic stemmed from. And it's not the only individual that's told me this. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we should explore this and bring it to light, because negotiating is not something that's very common. I didn't do it myself in the first job, but obviously as you get a little more experience, you talk to recruiters, talent acquisition, and they tell you the first offer is the low offer. And the other thing that they've told me over the years, and not only one individual, they've told me, we already spent a lot of money trying to get you, right? We already spent money filtering out other candidates. And if we send an offer letter to you, that means that we're invested in trying to get you. But we have a budget, and we're going to go with the low budget first. And if you come back with a number, as long as you, and this is from talent acquisition, as long as you explain and present a case of why we should provide 10%, 50% more on top of what we already offered, then we could go ahead and counter offer or accept your rebuttal negotiation and simply bring you on. We're never, this is what talent acquisition said, never going to rescind the offer because we already have another candidate, because essentially talent acquisition is working with management. If management, Mr. Mike Cruz, assume you're the manager, if you said, I want Lourdes, I'm not going to go back as talent acquisition and say, well, we recommend you go with Wally because he might be cheaper. That's not how it works. If Mr. Mike Cruz said we're going with Lourdes, we're actually going to work to try to get Lourdes on board. That's what I've been explained to from talent acquisition, and that's what I think the main idea is for this particular topic. But we want to explore the fear factor of negotiating, right? And how does this come about? Lourdes, you mentioned maybe culturally, and that is right, because culturally we don't have that experience or that bandwidth to actually rely on our family members negotiating salaries per se at this professional level. So I'm gonna be pinging on Paul Montoya, who in a previous episode mentioned that he was part of talent acquisition. So, Paul, hopefully you can open up your microphone and share some insight as to the fear factor of negotiating your salary.
Yeah, thanks, Lazaro. Um, well, yeah, first of all, um, I wish we had a different topic. You always pick these interesting topics. I have an interesting take. I always like to, when I'm working with students, especially, is you don't shortchange yourself, and there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, but the answer is our value is unlimited, right? We're all God's children. Our value is unlimited. What's your potential? It's unlimited. So what's your value? It's unlimited. So if you really believe your value is unlimited and your time is priceless, so that really puts it in perspective. But but reality is at the end of the day, if we're employees, we have to get paid a certain amount of job, and so you kind of just bank off of what a lot of times these job postings are posting what is what's being offered. So you kind of start with that. You try to hit the you hit the higher end. I had a situation when I was applying for a job, and it was with a buddy of mine, working for Dell, and and uh, and and before he even gave me an initial offer, that question came up. He's like, "Hey, how much do you want to make?" And I was like, "Hey, well, how much can I make?" He's like, "Well, let me look at your resume." And he was kind of my advocate, so I didn't even have to give him a number. He said, "Well, it looks like you got X amount of years of experience. I could probably valid or justify a level 3 role." And and so I was pretty happy. He gave me, the highest salary I ever was paid when I was in the industry. And I love that job at Dell. I still love Dell. But so so it's all about that situation. And if you're in a situation where just be honest, be truthful, and look at total compensation. I was a contractor for many years, and I learned the hard way that when you're not getting paid on vacation and you go on vacation, because when you're a contractor, most of the time you're only getting paid for the hours you work, you're burning both ends of the candle. Not only not getting paid for this time that you're taking off, but you're also spending money on this whatever vacation you're taking with the family. So I learned right then that, oh, how much do I value paid vacation? Well, now that's unlimited. All these different, total compensation. So and keep in mind who you're working for. If it's an opportunity and you're getting your foot in your door, at a great Fortune 100 company that's going to look great on your resume, then honest to goodness, that salary, it'll work itself out. What's that saying? Someone gives you an opportunity, to get your foot in the door, but once you get that job, no matter what your salary is, it's your job, it's your career, you're going to own it, it's your life. So it's your job to punch that door down and make the best of it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. However, we do also want to have the opportunity and notion that, hey, if you feel that you can negotiate this one, go ahead and take that route as well. Don't feel because of fear, oh, I just got to take the opportunity because I'm going to get my foot in the door. But be open to all options. Whichever option you decide to take, we're here to support you, but we are here to tell you that not negotiating is also something that you're able to do as long as you are aware that's a possibility that you can negotiate. So once you know that, and if you decide to forego that, that's fine. We are okay with that. Go over to Paul Montoya Jr.
Yeah, I'll share something. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wanted to share my first internship I was only 18 at the time when I was working there, but I negotiated, and they had given me an initial starting range of 25 an hour for 12 weeks or whatever it was. But I actually got that up to 30. So I got that up to 30, and that was just purely by negotiating. I was like, hey, just based on market rate, I think it should be on this end. And it was a paid internship, so that was me being greedy. But when it came time to meeting the other interns, everyone's like on the lower end of 22s, and it was a good company, Fortune 500. But they were asking me, they're like, Paul, how did you get that? And I was like, what do you mean? I asked for it. So sometimes that's all you got to do is you just got to ask for it. And yeah, you never know what's available unless you ask.
So let me ask you a question. You're a young individual. You were, this is for a specific internship that you were actually pursuing as a intern. Were you afraid to actually go ahead and ask for more money? How did you approach that? And obviously the outcome was good, but how did you
Yeah,
negotiate?
yeah. I figured, worst case, they'll decline the pay raise, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll just like stick with my pay here, because it was a paid internship, and like I said, it was a good company. It's good padding for the resume, but yeah, I mean, like that's the worst case, right? Like you said, that's they're not going to rescind an offer. Like, hey, this guy wants more. He's ambitious. Let's not hire him. That's actually a good sign that you want out of someone. So, um, you know, the worst case is you get to keep it, and then evaluate your options if you want to go somewhere else or just work there. But the upside is worth it. So it's always worth asking for something. I would say I wasn't afraid um, of losing the offer, more so afraid of having to work for the first time.
Um,
So
I never even heard this story. Paul J, did you negotiate that after you got your offer?
yeah, yep,
I
yep.
never even hear this story, man. This kid is running so fast, I can't keep up with them. That's funny.
and that was going to be my next question. Hearing your dad, Paul Montoya Sr. here, he's saying, get your foot in the door, et cetera, et cetera. And then his son comes out and says, you know what? I negotiated my first internship, and this is not even an entry level position. He's negotiating already. So good for you, Paul Montoya Jr. That's good for you. I'm glad that
Yeah.
you have that ability to see your value and definitely go ahead and negotiate. Another question for you, Paul Jr. Obviously, you were not afraid, but how would you suggest some of those individuals that are pursuing their first entry level position, right? And all of a sudden, there's this fear as soon as they get that offer letter that, oh, well, I'm just going to say yes because I don't want to have this rescinded. What would you suggest, or what would your advice be for them?
Yeah, I would say, well, first off, it's a different job market now than it was, in 2023 when I got that internship. Especially now, everyone has a fear of AI or the lowest of the low accepting jobs. But I would say once you have that offer, I mean the ball is now in your court. You control whether you want to move forward or not. It's not like they can retroactively pull the offer. I mean, there are some horror stories, but most for good regular companies don't do that. So once you receive that, it's really up to you what you want to do with it.
Okay, that's good insight. Turning over to Diego Martinez, who is coming up on uh, maybe 8 months or so of his first job with Boeing, full time, entry level position. But you've had internships in the past. Have you ever negotiated, Diego? And topic at hand, you already got the offer. Why not negotiate? If you said, you know what, I'm not negotiating. Why did you take that path? And was it because of fear or just because the offer was right on what you needed? Diego.
Yeah, so I didn't negotiate my internship, pay because not because out of fear, but because to be honest with you, I didn't even know I could. I thought, all right, this is the offer, this is the amount that they're giving me. Perfect. Where do I sign? And this was for both the internships in Everett and the internship in South Carolina. Didn't negotiate the pay or the relocation stipend because I thought that was just a set amount. And I mean, talking to the other interns, some interns did get paid a little more. However, that was based off of their status, in school. Some of them were, juniors in college, some of them were seniors, some of them were master's students. So, they got paid a little more. They had more experience and that made sense. That was for internships, though. For the full time position that I currently have now, that was a different story. I talked with my dad specifically, and he was like, "Hey, like, you know, you have to negotiate. Like, you never know uh, what you're leaving on the table if you don't ask." And that's. And I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. So I did, and it turns out in the negotiation process for my full time offer, I did leave some stuff out on the table that because I asked, I was able to get. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. So let me ask you a question. Obviously, your dad, he's not in the position of, oh, if I negotiate, I might, I have this nebulous fear or on doubt. He's full on objective. It doesn't affect him one way or another to some extent. I mean, it does affect him because you're his son, but he can tell you with a clear mind, clear head, go ahead and do this. But Diego, when he told you that, and when you were about to send that email that you crafted, were you fearful that they might actually pull that offer back? Or were you 100% confident, whatever they say, they're not going to pull it back? They might just say, this is what we offer, and then we'll go ahead and revisit that? Or what was your what was your mindset at that time? What was going through your mind?
No, yeah, absolutely. I was scared. And here's why. And this is specific to Boeing as well. So coming and so this was 2025. Yeah, so this was 2025. So if you follow the news, Boeing had a terrible 2024. They lost a lot of money and they laid off a lot of engineers. And I was part of the I was part of their rehiring phase. And so I felt that because they needed engineers and because there were a lot of, qualified engineers out there, I felt like if I had negotiated, they would have said, oh, you know, they thought that the number that I put forward, I would have, if I sent that email, I would have thought that Boeing thought that that was too much and, that they couldn't afford to pay me because of their, financial situation that they're recovering from. And I thought that they would have rescinded the offer and then gone for someone else that is for lack of better words cheaper. So yeah, that was the main fear going through my head, along with also the fact that this Boeing offer was the only offer that I had out of college. So the fear of losing that offer and going back to square one. So yeah, heck yeah, I was scared. But at the end of the day, I just kind of said, I just press sent on that email because again in the back of my head there was that little voice telling my gut saying you never know. And I got the job offer and did I offer a little more than what they were looking for? And yes, but they came back with a reasonable offer and I accepted it. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So when you negotiated, Diego, I'm going to stay with you for a little more. That fear is going through your mind. You crafted an email. How did you frame that conversation so that you could explain this is why I'm asking for a little more? Essentially, telling them this is what I bring to the table and this is what my value is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kept it professional, of course, always. But essentially, what I told them is, hey, I have two internships with you guys. So, you've already invested in me twice, by having me do two internships in this company. So, you're not gonna have to. So because I have two internships, I already somewhat understand the Boeing way of doing things and Boeing values and the Boeing process and how they operate. So, you know, and I didn't outright say this in the email because I in an email I probably wouldn't know how to word it, but essentially what I was saying is I have two internships with you guys. The advantage of hiring me is that you don't have to spend time, bringing someone else fresh out of college that has no idea how Boeing operates. You don't have to, spend time training them when you can just hire me. So because I have two internships with you guys, because I already bring that value, I should be compensated a little more than your original offer. So that's how I approach the email.
Yeah, and I think you did right by highlighting your experience and your two internships and the value and the diminished learning curve that you bring to the table for the position that you're coming in, and knowing the Boeing culture. That's a big plus for them, because you already know and you targeted Boeing because you already worked for Boeing in the past. So they could be a little more assured that, okay, this individual is not going to take the salary, work 6 months, realize that, oh my God, I don't like the company itself, I'm going somewhere else. That's a risk that they're willing to take with somebody else. Hence, they pay them a little less. With you, they increase your salary offer because you already told them the learning curve is going to be diminished, and I already know that I love the culture at Boeing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my take on it, and I think that's why they actually said yes, we will go ahead and do that, or we will go ahead and amend or counter offer your negotiation, and we'll go ahead and showcase that. So let me go over to Mr. Mike Cruz. Any thoughts from the conversation that we've been having so far?
Oh yeah, plenty, plenty. I think you brought up a lot of good discussion points. I think there was two things that I've been thinking about. The first thing is, and I'm currently telling a lot of students that we meet, research, know your company, know the pay scale if you can. I mean, some companies may not share the pay. Do they have to do it publicly now? Give you a range of salary?
So
I,
I believe that at one point last year, 2 years ago, they were still doing it. I'm not sure a lot of companies are still putting a range, but at one point, at least in California, it was the law to go ahead and disclose a range of salary.
So the big takeaway at that point is you need to know the company, you need to know the position that you're applying for, and hope you researched it out or had some internships. You kind of have a feeling for what your pay range should be, and and you need to probe that if you can. Like Diego says, I bring value to this organization, and so with the value point and with knowing the company and the pay range, basically I'm a fear reducer or fear avoider. And in order to avoid the fear of doing something like negotiating is understand what you bring to the table and what's on the table that I can ask for. Okay. So that means you need to understand the company, the pay ranges, and see what you can get. And don't be ridiculous. I mean, if you understand the company, if they say between 120 and 150, that's kind of in the range you're not going to ask for 180. Okay, that's way out of the range. So be reasonable. Research out your company, to know what the pay rate ranges are if you can, and you can always ask, as you negotiate, you say, well, I do have some other expenses. Da 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 da. Can you up it a little bit? So you can always ask for that. Like Lord said, and Paul, you can ask for what else is on the table that I can negotiate. The second point that I think that was brought out here is if you get rejected, don't feel bad. You've been offered a job. It's probably a reasonable starting point, and you have to have enough confidence in yourself that you're going to negotiate, and you don't get what you want. Don't feel rejected. And then that's the point where you have to make a decision. Is that what I asked for really necessary for this job position? Like you mentioned, movie expenses and all that. If they don't give it to you, are you willing to foot that bill for this job? So you have those decisions to make. So have a plan B. And if you don't get what you want, or you can always ask a little bit less, you can ask for a little bit more. And then if they don't get it, maybe work yourself down a little ways, staying above the initial offer that you've gotten. So work that out. But do fear reduction by doing research on the company and the pay scale. You should have a little bit of fear about not being accepted. I think that's only if you get really ridiculous on your offers. So I think if you're reasonable, the company's going to stay with you and try and negotiate. If they can't give you what you want, they may say, well, we can give you this. It's not what you asked for, but it's within our budget. Okay, so you have to be reasonable about that. So do risk aversion, do your research, and then have a plan B if you don't get what you want. And yeah, fear is. I mean, if you're brand new walking into a company, you're the newbie on the block. But if you had internships like Paul, I mean, like Diego had, you got your foot in the door. So we always advocate for the young students that internships are very, very, very useful in the future. So know your thing, have a plan B.
Awesome.
Good discussion today.
Thank you, sir. Great insight. Yeah, and going to highlight in parentheses here for some of the listeners and our audience who are thinking, man, okay, you're telling us to go ahead and know our value, negotiate, have a range, but how do I even do that, right? Well, you have various tools at your hand. Go ahead and Google it. Go ahead and say for an entry-level engineer at XYZ company, and very specifically, what city are you targeting? Because cost of living is different in the United States. California, let's focus in San Diego, it's a very expensive city, right? If you're going to San Francisco, San Jose, more expensive than San Diego, so the cost of living there is more than San Diego. I've had students that are moving from San Diego to San Francisco or San Jose, and they get an offer of $90,000 as an entry-level position. I tell them, did you look at the cost of living over in San Francisco? Because that $90,000 in San Diego is awesome as an entry-level offer, but relocation fees to go up to San Jose, think about the rent that you're going to be paying for a one-bedroom apartment. Also consider how much transportation is. Are you going to be driving? Think about where you're going to be parking. Everywhere in San Francisco, San Jose, parking is more expensive than San Diego. So that all comes into play. Google it and say cost of living in XYZ city, and go to Glassdoor. Glassdoor and other Indeed apps or websites actually have pay ranges or suggestions or averages of how much an entry-level engineer should be getting for XYZ company, and that is reported publicly. So it gives you more of a range of, okay, am I actually getting this in the ballpark? And going to reiterate Mr. Mike Cruz says, don't be greedy, don't go out too far. Obviously, our value at a personal level, some people, are way up here, and you think that you're the last Coca-Cola in the desert, but at the same time, you got to come down to reality and say, okay, how much am I really worth, and how much can I really ask for? And also consider the range of salary. If the entry-level position is giving you 120 to 150, maybe in the middle, somewhere 130, that's what your target sweet spot should be. But then how do you frame it? If you had internships, if you already worked at the company in the past somehow, if you have a special program skill that maybe you wanted to highlight, go ahead and highlight it in that particular email and send it off. Don't send the first draft. Let it sit for 12 hours. Have somebody else review it that's a professional that works in the industry that is very similar to you or has some insight or a couple more years of experience. Have them read it, let you get those comments back, amend it, and then send it back to that individual and get that proof read 1 or 2 times. Remember, when you actually get an offer, normally it's 3 days, 72 hours response time. And a lot of students are fearful, like, okay, if I don't respond in 3 days, they're going to rescind the offer. Yes, but if you send a counter or a negotiation email, that clock gets reset. So you don't necessarily have to worry about, oh, I have to accept or decline in 72 hours. When you send that negotiation email, the clock gets reset and it starts over again. Now the ball is on the talent acquisition of the company, and they'll send you a counter offer, and they'll restart the clock at that point for you to accept that particular offer, yes or no. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding, a little bit of insight. I'm going to turn over to Alex Polo. Alex, topic at hand is you already got the offer. Why not negotiate? Should you negotiate if you are somebody that has a little more experience? Do you negotiate your salary as an entry level engineer? Fear gets in your way. How do you deal with that? Should you negotiate? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, because I logged in and then I walked away. So I don't know if you had tried to reach out to me earlier, but uh, yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I'm in sales, so negotiation is part of life for everything you do. I mean, that's just life for me, and I see it always. Uh, in this case, it becomes kind of like a poker game, right? So, but yeah, definitely, like you said, it helps to know what your value is. If you're entry level, your experience, if you worked for the company before. Like I can give you the example of this recent opportunity that I got to join this new company I'm with, and the process for interview and everything took about 2.5 months, just because we were going back and forth. Originally, when I first spoke to HR, they asked me, "So how much do you want to make?" And for me, being in sales, I mean, yes, the base salary is important, but for me, more important is the compensation plan or the bonus plan. That's where, the harder you work, you're gonna make more money. So it's important always for me to look at that aspect too. Although for this case, the base salary that I asked for was higher than what they were offering. And my first conversation with HR, they pretty much HR said, "Okay, I'll talk to the manager and then we'll get back to you." But then like that was it. I didn't hear back for like 2 weeks, and so I actually reached out to the manager directly because I knew who he was, and I'm like, "Hey, this is what I discussed with HR, and uh, you know, this is what I think I'm worth. These are the reasons." And yeah, because I got the feeling that HR didn't really understand what I was trying to say. So after that, the conversations continued and the interview process proceeded, and at the end, uh, I didn't get what I asked for originally, but we kind of met in the middle. But the bonus structure that was offered was really good, so it's going to make up for more than what I had in mind.
Right.
To
Okay, so this is Alex Polo, the experience of 20 plus years of experience, right? Let's go back to Alex Polo 20 years ago. Did you negotiate your salary, yes or no?
26 years ago.
Okay, 26 years ago. So how did that Alex Polo fare on his first job offer?
On the first job offer, not so well.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, I was just excited to graduate and have a job before graduating, right? So, pretty much I took what came my way. I mean, yeah, like everyone else, I was trying to, the hype was all about HP and Boeing and those big companies. At the end, I ended up at a unknown company called THK that offered me back then, I think if you had mid 40s, that was really good, right out of college. So yeah, I think I started they offered me 40K back then, and uh, so that was that. And but again, for me was this offer came in like 2 months before graduation, so I had a secure job, and I know some of the people that even after graduation they couldn't find jobs even back then. So at least I got something going. So that's how I saw it, and it turned out great because in the end, this company exposed me to the whole industry, which now my reputation out there in the industry that I'm at in the automation industry is pretty good, thanks to this company, and it gave me the opportunity to go into sales. Not that it wouldn't have happened at another company, but at least with this company, it worked out great. I even went down to Mexico City to live for 5 years and develop the market for them. So so they gave me all that experience and exposure to the market that now I'm reaping those benefits. Yeah.
Right?
From the
And that is great. But I'm gonna be a devil's advocate here
Go ahead,
again.
go ahead.
If you had an opportunity to go back and negotiate, would you do it?
Uh, yes, if I would have known all this on that I could negotiate. But that's again that was the probably that yeah that was part of it too.
Yeah,
Not
and I'm
the
gonna keep on being devil's advocate
yes,
here.
yes,
So
go ahead,
let's
go
say
ahead.
you go back and you tell yourself, "Hey, Alex Polo, negotiate." What would you tell that young Alex Polo to deal with the fear factor that, you know what, you're crazy. This is an incredible amount of money. I've never seen so many zeros in that check. I'm going to say yes because I'm going to take it. And you're telling me to negotiate. What if they take the offer back? What would you tell that young Alex Polo?
I would tell them to just, you know, write down what makes you valuable. I mean, yeah, you know, you're graduating from a very good school. Uh, uh, you know, since you were growing up little in high school, you excelled in math. You know, you took calculus. You got a 5 on the AP calculus test. So those kind of things, you know, are valuable to the employers that are gonna hire you. I even saw one time an advertisement of a company that was hiring, and they said, how did it go? It said something about uh so you took apart your parents' radio when you were little. We need to talk. And yeah, I remember doing something like that when I was little. So experiences like that, you know, since you were growing up, what got you curious? So talk about those experiences and make them part of the negotiation process. I mean, you never know. And again, it is a poker game, you know, so you never know if they're bluffing or not. But I mean, in the end, yeah, it could risk you losing the offer. So that's the chance you have to take sometimes as well.
Right? It's obviously it's not 100% bulletproof that the
Correct.
company is not gonna take the offer away, but predominantly if you're dealing with larger companies, they've already spent money, invested money in scanning and going through a pool of candidates. So if they offered you something, they're willing to work with you, even if it's to receive a negotiation letter and say, you know what, we appreciate the effort, but no, this is our offer, take it or leave it. And then they'll turn it back on you as the candidate. And that's where you decide to say yes or no, or say, okay, maybe I pushed too hard. Can you at least meet me at the relocation bonus and or something along those lines? And they might say, you know, we can definitely do that. But to your point, it took you 2.5 months to actually close this particular offer and get on board with this new company endeavor that you're in. So that goes to show you that negotiating is a two-way street. It goes one way or the other, and the company is really willing to work with you, and they've already entertained other candidates. But if you're being the one being sought after, you have a little bit of a leeway to continue moving forward and leverage to go ahead and negotiate with them. So thank you, Alex. Great insight. Around
And
the room. Let
sorry,
me see. Yeah, go
just
ahead.
one more thing. So I want to say what you don't want to do, and I know someone that's doing this that did this in the industry, and now they burned themselves completely, and no one wants to hire them anymore. And is so they oversold themselves, you know, and they got the off, they got the job, and they're like, okay, you sound really good, and we're gonna hire you, and they did, and then after joining, they couldn't do what they said they were gonna do, and they were, you know, let go pretty much within a few months of starting. So yeah, and now that person has been looking for a job for a year and a half, and they can't find it, and they're a senior person, so
Yeah.
so just be careful of that too.
Yeah, it's a good warning. Thank you, Alex. Great insight. Be careful how you actually sell yourself. Don't oversell yourself. Don't overpromise, and be able to hit whatever you promise and promote. So thank you, Alex. Great insight. Around the room, any final thoughts, Diego Martinez?
Yeah. So I understand, the fear factor, everything, but The bottom line is, if you accept the first offer that the company gives you, then you're letting the company win. You're letting HR win because HR and the company did their job at getting the worker that they need at the lowest price. So you have to get over that fear factor, and in these negotiations understand that really, and if there's one thing to take away from this discussion, it's that the ball is really in your court. It's in the engineer's court. So you have to negotiate, know what you're worth, understand, ask if you're leaving anything on the table. A quick story, my I was part of this. I was part of this training program, and so I connected with a lot of new hires that were also on board at the same time as me, and the discussion of salary came up, and we didn't talk specific numbers, but I casually mentioned, oh yeah, I also got a signing bonus with my offer, and everyone looked at me like, what? You got a signing bonus? Like, how'd you get that? And I said, I asked. They're like, oh man, I should have asked. So like, once again, you never know what you're leaving on the table, but at the end of the day, if you negotiate and you know your worth, then you're now going from letting the company win to now you winning. And at the end of the day, you want to win, and you want to beat the company, because at the end of the day, no matter what, the company needs you, period.
Thank you, Diego. And just to echo your statements there, talent acquisition or human resources for the company, obviously they try to be friendly, but ultimately they work for that company and they have the company's best intent at their heart. And the company's best intent is to get good talent at the cheapest level possible. So once again, they do have a range and they do have a budget. So they're gonna offer you lowball offer first. If you take it, that's on you. If you say, great, I'm flattered, but this is how much I really value myself, and at least try to meet them halfway or in the middle or somewhere within that range. Going back to Mr. Mike Cruz's point, if there's a range, go ahead and make sure that you are within that range and you explain what your value is. So thank you, Diego. Great insight. Lourdes, final thoughts.
Just negotiate. You never know what the answer is going to be. Most of the time, it's not going to be a no.
Thank you. I don't know if Wally Lozano is able to open up the mic, and any final thoughts or any questions that we might not have addressed.
Yes, thank you for everyone sharing. I'm actually from Southern California. I relocated to Maryland. I work for Northrop Grumman. I'm coming up in a couple of months, my 2-year mark. And I'm actually in the state where a lot of you guys were talking about negotiating, applying for a new job, relocating. I'm actually meeting with hiring managers before I apply to kind of best gauge what the solutions, what kind of engineers are they looking for. So by the time that I go into the interview, I have already assessed what that band looks like, right? If you have the lower band, what does that engineer look like? And what does the high-end engineer look like? So by the time I get to the interview, which it's actually going to be coming this week and the following week, the next week, I have a good idea of how to address those things. So before I get the offer, I'm already setting myself up for a general idea of what I'm looking for. So I'm looking specifically to relocate back to either Redondo Beach area or San Diego.
Mhm.
So I saw that you had this talk, and I said, you know what, I'm exactly in that position. I did negotiate when I first relocated. I used a competing offer where the salary wasn't increased, but the relocation was partially increased to kind of match with that. Going from the West Coast to the East Coast, it's not cheap, even if you move 5 hours away. So yeah, so that's kind of my approach, but I also know that there's different ways of doing things, and so that's why I came today.
Thank you, Wally. Couple questions before we continue on. Are you trying? I'm assuming you're trying to stay within the company that you named, Northrop Grumman, and that's the more or less effort that you're doing at this point, relocating from the East Coast over to the West Coast again. So, how is that effort going? Obviously, the company has visibility on your salary range, so they have a little more leverage in that respect, but you can also negotiate the actual stipend to relocate. And I think that's where you have a lot of leverage because you're coming back over to the West Coast. Wally, any insights?
Yeah, so that's definitely fair when it comes to that visibility. Um, just a little bit of going into my background, I study electrical engineering. Coming here, I pivoted into circuit design. And so now I'm pivoting back into what I was actually going to go into, which is guidance, navigation, and control. So I'm not just tied to one company because there are these levers that some that I do have control over and some that I don't.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Wally. Thank you for that insight. Paul Montoya Jr., any final thoughts, sir?
No, no, I like Diego, your attitude. It's a good attitude. Always keep your options open, be ambitious, constantly ask for more, because that's how you get ahead. So you want to win. That's the end goal.
Thank you, Paul Montoya Jr. That's awesome. Great insight, great perspective. Paul Montoya Sr., any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for putting this together. It's always a pleasure to see the local, the common faces and everything. And I don't know the advice. I'm trying to reflect, get a better story. There was a time about 12 years ago, or actually, when was it? It was 2012, whenever year that was, 2012 ish. I felt like I made it in the IT industry. I was like, "Oh, you did it! You broke the glass ceiling. I made it." And when I reached that pinnacle, I was like, "Okay, I got to help my twin brother. I got to help my family members. How can I help them get into this cool, IT industry that I was in?" And it was funny because I had my dream job. One of the times I was working at EMC, and I didn't want to leave, but what happens in the industry, or usually happens, is that people you work for, people leave the company, and they poach, right? They know exactly how much you make. They know exactly your work-life balance. They know things about you, and so when they call you, you take their calls, and they throw carrots at you and try to get you to jump ship. So I learned that try to stay at jobs 3 years, and this. So when those carrots were being thrown at me, this one time, the strategy I used, I did not want to leave. I just got a new position and da 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 with terrible timing. So I gave them an offer. I didn't think they would, they would. I gave them a scenario. I was like, "Hey, you hire me? Why don't you hire me and I don't know, my brother-in-law or me and my twin brother?" And I gave them these impossible requirements. And at that time in 2012, they were so desperate to get a resource or to get me. I don't know what the situation is that they called me on my bluff. And they accepted all of my impossible requirements. And then I was left holding the bag saying, "Oh, shoot. I actually didn't think you were going to do that. And now I have to figure it out." And I put myself in such a bad position. I accepted the offer. And then the company I was working for didn't want to lose me. So they spent an hour convincing me to stay. So then I reneged the offer. And then they ended up firing me a month later. So then I went back to the same company saying, can I still have the offer? It was terrible. So the moral of the story is maybe just take care of your own career and let everyone else do their own stuff.
Right.
But boy, that was such a crazy times back then. I don't think I think those days are long gone. And my other advice is that take advantage of your 30s. When you're in your 20s, like I'm telling Paul Jr., your objective is to get to six figures as quickly as humanly possible. If you're not making six figures as an engineer, you got to figure that out. Get to six figures. Get a Cisco cert, get an IT cert, get whatever cert you got to get, whatever experience you got to get to six figures. And when you hit your 30s, that's your bread and butter. That's when you're really setting up the rest of your career. And when you hit your 40s and everything, you're just hitting your stride and doing what you do. And the other thing is that here's a funny last thing I'll leave you with, something to ponder. is that you need a degree and all these credentials to get these jobs. But you know what's funny is if you run that company and you're the business owner, you don't need a thing. So think about that for a minute, who we're working for and who's making the money.
Thank you, sir. Great insight, great perspective. I'm turning over to Brenda Sillas. Thank you for joining us. As we're closing it out, I know that you work in the health medical industry, but I just wanted to pick your brain. You already got the offer. Why not negotiate? Any insights on negotiating, and why are we fearful about negotiating? Brenda?
Let me see. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, you're probably asking the wrong person because I was on this call because I need to be empowered to negotiate.
Okay.
I have never negotiated an offer in my life, and I'm very ashamed to say that, but I'm about to change it.
Okay.
And so I don't even know how to answer that question. I think the fear of negotiation comes because you feel like you have no other choice, right? Like I have a family, I have a mortgage, and you're just so grateful for the opportunity. But now that I'm learning everything about compensation, how it works, what I'm delivering, what other positions get paid, I am just attracting my next opportunity because I am just ready to just negotiate, and I'm prepared, right? Like I've got all of my things in order, my finances in order, my life in order, and now I'm at a stage where I can like, yeah, bring it. I'm going to negotiate because I'm not going to just take the first offer.
Yeah, great insight, great perspective there. And we did hear from a lot of the younger individuals that they've learned by seeing some of the mentors that they see, being in organizations that they're involved in, that negotiation is part of the process. And it shouldn't necessarily be something to be fearful, but going back to Mr. Mike Cruz, you have to do your research and know what your value is, and how to frame that when you're actually showing it and sharing it with your prospective employer when you actually get the offer. One of the big things, and from my perspective, the takeaway should be when you get an offer, it's not going to get rescinded if you negotiate. So that's one of the fear factors that I see a lot with young students, young professionals, thinking, oh man, they already gave me this number. This is the last number that I'm going to see from them. But it's in reality, the ball is in your court, and everybody here echoed that earlier. So we'll definitely have to share this a little further down the line with more people. Going over to Mr. Mike Cruz. Any final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I guess I'm always thinking. So Brenda, I guess the biggest thing that came out of our conversation today is we talked about negotiating, the fear of. I'm going to backstep a little bit and say, why are you negotiating? What are you negotiating for? What do you want to get out of it? I think you have to ask that basic question to yourself, because negotiating is a whole new effort that you're going to get involved in. So you need to ask yourself, why do you want to do it? What are your expectations? What if you get rejected? I mean, all those things you need to develop. And it looks like you've developed a plan already. You've done your research. You know what your peers are making and what you want to do, et cetera, et cetera. So the research is a foundation of a good negotiation. You need to know who you are, what you can offer, what the company can offer. And if you understand a lot of that, then you take away the fear of negotiation, and you go in with some confidence. So that, and with that confidence, you always need a plan B. If you don't get everything you want, then you kind of reset your goals, you reset your ambitions, and see if you can work with that. So, but always move forward. You may not get it all. If you get some of it, you might want to take that and then move forward.
Thank you, sir. Great insight, great perspective. Alex Polo, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, there's this recent example for me about if I would have just left it to HR, probably I wouldn't have gotten the offer. So I took the extra step to, to know who was the hiring manager, and then talk to them directly. Uh, I mean, you guys were present when I was at the trade show, and I talked to the company, and that's where I learned about the offer and all that. So that's how I was able to get to that hiring manager. So uh, the other important thing about this whole thing, I don't know if it's already been mentioned, but just network. The more people you know, the more people who know you, the better. I mean, again, offer, those people I met at the trade show, put in a good word for me because they met me. They saw my personality at the show. Even as we were talking, one of my previous customers came up and said, "Hey, Alex, how's it going?" So they saw that I was known in the market already, and that's what they were looking for, someone that could for this area at least of the country, which they had never had anyone before. But networking again is another thing you need to do besides negotiate and all. So.
Yeah, and that's also a good point there. I don't think we had brought that up in regards to negotiation and adding to your value. So true, that is very true. If you network the individuals that know who you are, they can vouch for you. They could be utilized, leverage as a reference, and that could definitely add more value to you getting exactly what you're asking for. So thank you everybody for joining for this particular topic. If you get the offer, it's not necessarily going to get rescinded. So why not necessarily negotiate but negotiate by doing your research, and losing that fear is never 100% guaranteed. You're always going to be fearful hitting that send button like we heard from Diego Martinez. But if you explain and craft your email in a way that you highlight why you are valuable to that company and explain what you bring to the table that maybe they hadn't considered, and explain what you're looking for as far as the salary increase and or relocation of a bonus, etc., that might give you a better hand in the negotiation offer. Wally, you have your hand up?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The last thing I wanted to add is part of the negotiation, it's not just the monetary, which is we need to have access to have a place, to have food, be able to have time with our friends and our family, but also looking into what opportunities are they providing to develop yourself, to grow into other opportunities or grow your skill set, such as having programs for paying for your master's, paying for other certifications, really highlighting what should you accomplish within the next 3, 6, and 1 year months.
That's a good point. Also, definitely, if you have to pay that back, or if that's included, that's part of your benefit package, that all comes into play in making a full-on decision and commitment to that particular company and or position that you're pursuing. Also, I know and I've been able to negotiate increasing PTO or vacation days. When you actually are coming from another company, you can definitely say, at this other company, I accrued X number of days. If I move over to your company, can I continue having those number of days, or at least increase that number versus an entry level position? And they will go ahead and comply to some extent. They will go ahead and work with you. So those are little things that on the side, they all go into the full-on negotiation package. So it's not necessarily just focusing on the salary, but for this conversation, to simplify it, we're focusing on early entry career positions, how you even approach and or lose some of that fear. But there's a lot of effort that we can provide. Alex Polo, myself, Mr. Mike Cruz, Paul Montoya Sr., Diego Martinez now comes into the mix, and even Paul Jr. and Wally, as well as Lourdes, to share some insights about negotiating. So feel free to reach out to any of us and we can definitely help out. Brenda, feel free to reach out to all and any of us, and we can definitely sit down with you, have a conversation, and maybe give you a little bit of guidance if you need it as far as how to even negotiate. So with that, thank you so much for joining Cafecito Chats. We'll see you next week. Hasta luego. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.